guys start.
We have, and did Mark say he wasn't going to be here this
Yes.
Saturday?
Yeah, I knew he wasn't coming. That's why, yeah, we're good.
All right. Well, then, here we go.
And I will tell you, I forgot to invite Jesse, so don't, I really did. And I just invited Jesse to Monday night's meeting because he was out for a couple weeks, and so he's back. So
You're giving him a little more paternity leave. It's
well,
okay.
you know, I didn't know if there would be anything. I know he's working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes right now from the other meetings. So, and I know we don't have information, you know, answers on that stuff yet.
Right.
So,
yeah, he can have another morning to snuggle his baby. It's
there
fine.
you go. There you go.
Yeah, no shame in that. None at all.
Right. So, yeah, here we are, Saturday morning work session. Let's run through the agenda for Monday night's meeting. And then with any time left over, we had said we would discuss, you know, what we thought were potential responsibilities for clerk of council and planning and zoning clerk as potential new roles within the village. But we'll start with the meeting agenda. Right, we have two sets of minutes on the agenda. Has everybody taken the time to review those? If not, make sure that you have by Monday. We have our regular village reports, which from those of us here, from a council perspective, Tony, are you prepared to have your planning and zoning report?
Yeah, we just had a meeting, I guess.
Okay, just making sure. And
Or should I
Diane,
be reporting on my former committee assignment or my new committee assignment?
well, we still have you as the liaison to planning and zoning.
Well, right,
I would certainly hope that you would be reporting on your current committee assignment. So if you have not had a meeting, then I would imagine you should be getting updates from whomever held that seat beforehand. Which takes us up to in-village reports. Diane, you're prepared for an MPCA report?
Right, I can do that, or Mark can do that. We never really settled that, I guess, as to who was doing that. But
Your name is the one that's on the agenda, so I'm looking to you.
And we
yeah,
can,
how about that, Mayor?
yeah, I don't know why. Sorry, I told you guys my desk was a mess, and I you know I wouldn't be able to wait. So, I'll change. Yeah, I think we just kind of went back and forth because somebody had said something about, well, you're in the meetings now because of whatever, and I think at the time David had missed a couple in a row.
Right.
So I think that's. I mean, Mark lives with one, so to me, it's a 2-second swap out for Lisa to do it. So honestly, I'm leaving it to you guys to decide.
Well, I think since David is although no, a lot of times, David, you're not available, but if I could back up David, if we
Yeah,
did
that's
it.
fine.
So is David the official MPCA liaison? Because that's
I
No,
the
he's
believe
the-
so.
I believe I am, yes. I sadly did have a stretch where my work schedule was messed up and I
Right.
couldn't attend, but largely that should be resolved.
okay. Then it sounds like for this time around, we still need someone to do it. Diane, I think you said that you are capable of.
Right.
So why don't we, for this meeting, Diane, if you would be kind enough to be prepared with that update for Monday, and then going forward, it can go back to David. Does that
Will do.
sound about right?
Right. And like I said, if David can't make it for some reason, I can back him up.
Very good. Then moving on to council reports. Community, you know, again, for these purposes, I am really just looking for people to socialize whatever highlights there are in their reports. So that way we know nobody's surprised. There's no big, you know, no big drama, right? We can be prepared. And if there's questions, now is a better time to get them out than in the middle of the working meeting. For community, David, you're prepared with your report? Are there any highlights we should be made aware of?
Nothing crazy. Like I said, a couple, or the last month's, thing we have, we'll be expanding vending options at the pool. The pricing stuff's finalized. The main thing recently is that I sent out something for the newsletter to the mayor about soliciting ideas soliciting early ideas for what our first weekend in June's our first annual, diversity celebration weekend thing should look like to the perspective of our villagers. So hopefully some of our community emails me and shoots some ideas of things we could do. But other than that, no surprises.
Okay. Then moving on to finance, and that's me. We did have a meeting, reviewed the year-end financials, and discussed a potential financing option for lake dredging and also possibly a portion of the community building, and that would be borrowing against future TIF revenues. And so from that meeting, the outcome or the takeaway was we asked Mayor Hughes to work with our attorney's office, Frost Brown Todd, right? I forget which way the Brown and the Todd go in there, but because we are aware that they have a person on their staff that is sort of a specialist in that kind of thing. So we were looking to get some information on how that might look for potential lending. And our next meeting will be once we have some answers to that question. Once we know that we have information, we'll meet again. Joe is streets and he's not here. Diane, have you had a communications meeting to report on?
Right, we had one yesterday. I don't know.
It all
Yeah,
runs
yesterday,
together.
Thursday. And yes, so I wanted to cover the newsletter situation because we're not sure about MPCA's commitment. I'm hoping to get a clarification, but that won't happen until after the Monday meeting. But so I'm not going to make it a deal about it, but we talked about the newsletter and contents and things like that. So.
Okay. Tony, safety, I don't know if you've had a safety meeting since last month, right? Okay. And I don't know that there was anything pressing to report from the end of my tenure there.
Well, I was on that committee and I don't recall anything pressing.
I mean, we were talking about some stuff, but nothing that was all that important. And then last up would be legislation, and that's Councilperson Berger, who's not here. I know that he was working on the legislation that I think it's probably on here for first reading, the amending the section 204.1 of the codified ordinances, and that was the one regarding rebranding and logos and whatnot. I think that was the big thing going on in legislation. Which takes us to the legislation portion of the agenda, right? And so we have the final reading for appointing our canine officer, Officer Kimber, pardon me. Third reading for the mad scientist. That's the people that we're working with for the grant for the lily pond and one of the retention ponds. Oh, Councilperson Bruger, welcome.
Oh, hi.
We'll let
No.
you. Mark,
No,
I was.
okay.
Mark,
I'm just
I
saying
was-
he's got his mute on.
Oh, yeah. I was just starting to. We're kind of sailing through the agenda this morning. So we are up to committee reports and then legislation. So if you have a report that you wanted to update us on for legislation, and then if you want to just review the legislation on the agenda.
I do not have the agenda pulled up because I do not have my double screen right now.
Uh-oh.
I'm on my single screen. So, yeah, the only report I have is last time we met, we talked about the changing signage stuff that I got Tiffany the other day. So we'll see a first reading of that on Monday. And let me get out full screen and I can go over the legislation here. I'm on a Chromebook. There
Oh,
we go.
I do just remember, if I could monopolize a moment of your time, that
Sure.
me and myself and Madam Mayor were talking about having the ability to provide vaccinations for COVID down the road within Minerva Park, because now we have these testing things, and that got my mind rolling on that. And the last thing I know, we were in touch with the Franklin County Department of Health on what requirements there would be for doing that, because I can give a vaccine in any place from a hospital to, a back alley. But I just want to do things, according to, what legal requirements there are for the distribution of these things. And apparently there are a few other people who live in the village who would likely be able to assist in a distribution effort like that. So I guess we're just waiting to hear back from them, is my understanding.
Yes. Hopefully we'll hear something by Monday, whether or not it's even an option.
Okay.
So,
How
because
would
as
we
it,
get access to vaccines?
well, and that we would be on like the Franklin County list. Like there's actual list of like who distributes, like we were able to get the test kits, like he was saying. And that's one of the, which obviously is much simpler. And they have like, you can be put on a registry for like anybody to be able to come to the village. Like I've just posted it on the village site. Like I didn't have them put it on like a national thing to where we have every person under the sun and moon coming in. I opted not to do that at this point. So then as soon as David had reached out, I reached out to Franklin County to see if, and we know it's not gonna be right this second. I mean, CVS is fighting to get the vaccine to be able to do it. We know that.
Yeah,
So,
the biggest issue will likely be logistics and storage.
right. I mean, we would theoretically probably only, I would think Johnson and Johnson would be the one that we would be one of the, would be the easiest option in the event that we could do it. So
Yeah.
storing, so it's a thing that they may say, not a chance in this world. They also, if you pull up our zip code, there's actually not really anything. They're all either 43229 or whatever. So there's really not much in our zip code. But they all, again, they may say that they've got plenty, that they don't need any more locations. So it would be like a 1-day type thing, or every other weekend or something, I mean, that was kind of our thoughts, but
Heck, call me.
yeah.
Give them my
So,
cell phone number.
yeah, and I know that there's a lot of nurses in the village. I think you guys know that as well. Maybe we could I think we could easily get volunteers to do it if we advertised it for specific days to get it done. So it may just be too much for us, and that, once we got the list of these are the requirements, but it's a why not try? And we're gonna why not try until it doesn't
I
work.
think especially if they, maybe not so much now, but once they open it up in the late spring, early summer for a free for all,
Right.
doing it for the village, if again, it would have to be the Johnson & Johnson one
I
for
agree.
logistics purposes, but I think that could be really interesting to do
Mhm.
something like that. See, I'm old enough to remember standing in line for the polio vaccine. So, these things happened in a neighborhood, and that's how it got done back
Right.
then. So, although it wasn't quite as difficult to distribute it back then. But
Right.
I think I don't think we should even think about doing it now. But
Right.
because I've seen all the paperwork and everything involved, and the two-step and the registration card and the waiting, you know, you have to be really well organized and to, you know, get that done. But anyway, but I think
agree.
in principle, I think it's an interesting thing to explore.
I completely agree. Like, for me, the only thought I have is the Johnson and Johnson 1 and out. So, you know, I mean, to me, that would be a great option if we could make it happen. And again, I think that it might be a long shot. So who knows?
But the other thing is I hear on the radio that there are, I don't know if this applies to anyone in our community, but that there are seniors who are just who are by themselves and who are not even trying to, even though they're qualified based on age, they're not trying to attempt to go out and do anything. And I don't know if we have anyone like that in the village, but I don't know how we could necessarily find out. Maybe we could, you know, put it in the newsletter, put it on Facebook, you know, somebody. But if we could have because I wouldn't mind driving someone to,
Right.
I could do it. I have the time. So I'm sure there's other people in the village that could do it.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think the person who's living at home alone may not be really keen on having a stranger, even though they're from the village, take them somewhere. I don't know, but I think it would be something that would be nice to put feelers out if anyone needed help that way.
Right. And I think after the experience trying to schedule my mom and dad's vaccines, it was time consuming.
That's changed. That's changed. I could tell you now that the last 5 days it's opened up, and opened up, and they had no trouble at all. I mean,
Try again.
seriously.
It took me over 5 hours to do it yesterday.
Yeah. Which one did you try for? We're getting in the weeds right now, but
Oh, no. Okay, so when you go on the Kroger one, you
oh
go
no,
in,
not the do the hospitals. Forget the little guys, but if you go
because
like
I couldn't figure out how to even get on. And okay, this is a perfect example. Like, for me, I know what I'm doing, and it was like so much. Like, first off, I don't have time to sit there. So I wish you would have told me that, to figure out who does what. So the only thing I thought of, I went on like Walgreens and Myers and all of that, and you have to do some registration. And so I was like, yeah, I'm out.
yeah.
No, didn't do all that. So then I went to Kroger and I'm like, okay, I can actually schedule one with name and address. So I clicked on Kroger, and you would pick the first shot, and then it would go to the second shot, and it'd be like, sorry, we're sold out for the second shot. And then you go back, and then they don't have any appointments. And oh, for the love of God, Lord knows you can't even get 2 in the same place. So my mom's going to China in 2 days, and my dad's going to Japan in 2 days. So I don't even know where they're at, but they're not anywhere near here.
Well,
And it took
but,
forever.
you know, we did there's Schottenstein's has it for anyone that's Schottenstein's has it, and so and I was at Mount Carmel. So I was at Mount Carmel.
That's
My
what I should have
husband
done.
thought he could get the Johnson and Johnson, so he went to Schottenstein's, but ended up not getting the Johnson and Johnson. But he tried for that, and both of us were able to. My husband actually, John, is actually technophobes. Anyway, he picked up the phone and called the phone number, and they picked up right away and gave him I mean, I was shocked. They called the number, it rang once, that he said, give me an appointment. They gave him one, and we went, and it was fine.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
should have
it was
done
just
that,
amazing.
because
It was
mom
amazing.
and dad, the end of this part is mom goes, well, we're registered at Myers. And I said, okay. I go, when did you register at Myers? Mom goes, like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, so you think somebody from Myers is going to eventually pick up the phone and call you like in 6 months and tell you they have a shot? I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, you have to go. So, and now my mom is not like by any stretch. I mean, she can work on the computer and do all that stuff, but she's just like, no, they're going to call us. I'm like, Mom, you've lost your mind. So that's what I did yesterday. I spent 5 hours in the middle of work trying to, now it wasn't 5 straight hours. Like, I was literally, because you would put in your zip code with Kroger, which is what I
And
like.
would make you walk through that. Yeah, no, I did that stuff early on, and
Okay,
it was ridiculous,
It
but
was.
it's, I mean, we're in the Mount Carmel health system for doctors, and they kept
So-
popping these emails And I would click on the email and would say, oh, sorry, we don't have any. And that's like, why did you send me an email? So
So
but finally I clicked on it and it popped and it said, hey, we got 5 appointments. When do you want to come in? It's like,
So if
whoa.
we can wrangle this back in, it sounds like there is a potential appetite to seeing what we could do to be able to have a vaccination station here in the village. It sounds like it would only be if we could provide the Johnson and Johnson, because that's a one shot and you're done kind of situation. And it sounds like Councilperson McNamara and Mayor Hughes are doing what they're doing. And that sounds delightful. Now, we can get back to legislation with Councilperson Berger.
Yeah. So for Monday, excuse me for a moment. For Monday, we have the third reading of our Kimber. I don't think we need to say anything about that. Third reading of Mad Scientists. Also, I don't think we really need much to say about that. Our EMS and declaring it an emergency. I know we did that so we have a second reading. Is everyone going to be okay with passing that, waiving readings and declaring an emergency?
Have we heard any pushback at all from the community?
No.
All right, then I suppose that's fair enough for my taste, because we're trying to make money, not do anything shady with an emergency. Okay.
Yeah. We'll take a first reading at amending 204.1. That's the putting the correct description of our flag in, and then making some rules for changing logos and such. And the 04-2021, Mayor Hughes, you want to talk about that a little bit? Supplemental approach, is that probably just moving some money around to places it needs to be done?
That was for and that's what I was actually getting ready to check. For some reason, I was thinking that might have been third reading. I'm going to verify that because I thought I did that with the Mad Scientist, and maybe my mind's not. Because that, I'm not even pulling it up. I should pull it up and make sure I'm not saying something. But I'm pretty positive that was just the grant money moving around for the project for the Lily Pond. We were awarded a grant.
Yeah,
MPCA was awarded a grant.
you're right. That's exactly what that
Okay.
one is.
So, but for some reason I thought I did those the same day, but maybe we didn't get it on in time. So I will verify that it is in fact second. I mean, it definitely says second reading everywhere.
And unless anyone has any questions on any of that, that is our legislative agenda for Monday.
All right, well, and then while we are here, right, we are down, oh, yeah, I see your hand. I'm getting.
No, it
Okay.
should be third reading. Just as an FYI, I will get that fixed because I thought I did it the same day. Third
Okay.
reading, March 8th.
So with that, is there at this time, any old business that people are intending to raise during this business meeting on Monday?
Oh, no, I guess it's not old business. Okay.
Or new business that people are intending to raise on Monday?
I've been asked to, I've been asked to ask the police chief. So I'm saying that I'm going to ask the police chief. I talked to a couple of people who were concerned about the carjackings in the park, and they talked to me about their residents who've been in the park for a while, so they know about the old block watch that they used to have and neighborhood watch. And so they were talking about that and talking about the carjackings and stuff. And so they felt like maybe they felt that the police department was being rather quiet about it and hadn't said anything to the residents, or there hadn't been anything in the newsletter. So they just wanted to know what approach the police were taking to the rise in crime in the area. So I'm going to ask him that question so he could speak to it in case there are people watching that would
Yeah.
like to know.
For my own clarification, when you say carjackings in the village, because I'm not aware of anybody's car being stolen
Yeah.
with a person in the car. I hadn't heard of that. So if that's a thing, then yeah, that's a perfectly fair question. So
I'm also
Tiffany,
Has there been one in the park?
Not that I'm aware of.
yeah.
People are
So
leaving, people are leaving their cars running. This has happened more than once. People are leaving their, and we won't get in the weeds of this. People are going out, they're starting their car and they are disappearing. And it has happened more than once. It's happened more than twice. And same thing with leaving your cars unlocked. If you leave your cars unlocked, people are rummaging through it. But miraculously, if you leave your
Yeah.
car doors locked, they walk right past.
No, no, I'm not going to bring up the
Okay.
fact that people don't lock their cars. I think that's crazy,
Right.
but I'm just, okay, so it's not carjacking, it's just stealing someone's car that's running in the driveway,
yeah.
idling. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the language is clear
All right.
so that
Big
it
carjacking.
doesn't imply more than it is, right? A carjacking in my
Well,
head is
stealing-
somebody,
Stealing your car in your driveway in the middle of the day
yeah.
while it's
Well,
idling is still kind of a freak out, especially if you've only left it.
Theft is crappy no matter what, right? Having your personal property and space invaded is never delightful, but there is a chasm between being yanked out of your car at gunpoint, which is what my imagination goes to with carjacking, and having your car stolen while it's running unlocked in your driveway.
Right.
Two very different things. And I just want to make sure that we're communicating what needs communicated there.
Okay.
And then I don't know if he will get into the weeds on something, and I don't want to get not into the weeds on something, but him and I had a conversation about a particular device that could potentially help with, again, I don't want to go into detail because I don't know that how much they want everybody to know what they're coming into. Does that make sense? Like, I guess if you tell somebody I have this, then, okay, so, and maybe that's more of a safety meeting type thing. And also we haven't gotten it yet because I don't know if we're going to have to request an appropriation for it. I am completely on board for it. And it's a matter of whether or not we would do one or two. There was also a discussion of maybe like a 30-day trial type thing. Again, I don't want to go into this, but obviously the police department is completely, and I'll let him speak to this, but just for you guys, police department obviously is getting the phone calls. So they are fully aware. The issue that you have is if you start posting certain things on Facebook, you are freaking some people out with something that they really don't need to be freaked out about, because if you don't leave your car running, they're not bothering anybody other than they're looking, it's a crime of opportunity, and that's all over the place. So it's kind of one of those things that it is posted. We did post it. Don't leave your cars running, and don't, all those, and I believe it was in the newsletter a month ago, if I'm not mistaken. And if I didn't put it in there, that is on me. But just not to leave your car doors locked. And that's even if your car is running, leave your car doors locked. So I'll let him answer to that.
Yeah.
And
So the nice thing about going through what people are intending to bring up in old business and new business is now you can give chief a heads up saying, hey, we expect this to come up,
it's a great
have
question.
a statement ready, right? So that way it's not on the spot, off the cuff, and potentially careless. It can be a crafted answer that says what needs to be said, allows them to say, hey, we have some ideas that we're working on that may be proactive to, there's a thing we might get that proactively helps,
Right.
yada, yada, but he can craft that answer. All right, any other new business that people intend to bring up on Monday?
I'm gonna probably surprise you guys.
Hmm?
I got something, but I'll wait till Monday night.
So Tony, so just as I just explained that, life always moves better without surprises. What you're saying is you would prefer to surprise us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly what I'm telling you.
Duly noted, sir. And with that brings us to the end of the agenda. We've had, oh yes, go ahead, Mayor.
No, Diane, were you trying to say something right when Tony was?
Yeah, I was just trying to, it's not a new bit. I wanted to discuss something. I just wanted to bring something up in this work session.
Okay.
So that's not new or old business. Right now, it's just.
Yeah. So we can move on to the non-meeting agenda portion of of our time here this morning. And so the portion that I was looking to, or that we had set aside to discuss here, was what we all envisioned as duties for a planning and zoning clerk and a clerk of council, right? It sounded like, Diane, did you have an additional thing you wanted to address in this time?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up something that I was researching for newsletter and communications, because there was a little bit of money involved, and we went over it in the communications bill bit. I need to, anyway, so I can talk about it or not, just throwing it out as.
Okay, yeah, we can come back around to that. Were there any other topics that people wanted to bring up in this work session? All right, well then let's start. At the end of last Monday's work session, we had left with the task to each of us come to this meeting with our idea of what we would expect a planning and zoning clerk and a clerk of council to have as duties, so that we could flesh those out to see how that could be appropriately staffed. So Tony, do you have that put together? What is your, and I come to you first because you were the one who first raised village staffing. So what was your idea for the duties of these roles?
Well, the planning and zoning clerk and code enforcement officer is, like I had said, was going to be combined. When I say planning and zoning, or planning and zoning duties, I'm more concerned about the permitting process, and that being because that's a big part of the workload for the code enforcement officer, is answering the phones and dealing with the permitting process.
So I'm trying to boil this down to sort of like a bulleted list. So if what I heard you just say was that in your opinion, the first most important duty for a planning and zoning clerk would be to maintain and manage the permitting process.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, like I had said before, the minutes of a meeting, I see the planning and zoning clerk being the one that's going to the meetings, which would make it much easier to do the minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's really the main thing, is because the permitting process is the thing that takes up all the time. That and answering the phones or I wouldn't say answering the phones, but to be there in the office to take those calls and talk to people through it, instead of having Lisa doing that all the time. That would be the separation, because I'm trying to, the way I've envisioned this is, what Becky used to do, and trying to split those things up.
Sure. So I hear what you're saying. Part of this exercise is to take statements like the things Becky used to do, and instead of having a statement where one waves their hands and doesn't have anything actionable in that, right? Because I can't say that I know what all of the things that Becky used to do, is to take those and put those into a bulleted list that we can then move action, right? So I'll look at my own list that I had, and that was to maintain and manage the permitting process, right? I also had noted that the planning and zoning clerk should be preparing the minutes. I also would expect them to do any offline research for the planning and zoning committee, right? So the planning and zoning committee should be able to hand off certain research tasks, look at how other areas handle these planning and zoning issues, what are other ordinances that represent this kind of thing. So offline research is another that I would anticipate, as well as being able to answer questions during business hours. So, that kind of stuff for both residents and the administration. And I think that wraps up what I had anticipated for planning and zoning clerk. So I had 2 additional bullet points beyond what you had brought up. Does anybody else have additional duties that they would anticipate for a planning and zoning clerk?
I would also add in their, preparing for the meeting, the planning and zoning meeting, like putting together the agenda and getting out the packets to the members of planning and zoning.
There you go. That's a good one. I hadn't thought of that. Anyone else?
Well, I'm thinking of that because it wasn't wasn't done very well in this last meeting. We had a little breakdown.
Mhm. All right, so I'm not hearing anybody else raise their hand on more. Oh, here comes Councilperson Berger.
So would they also be linked up with code enforcement? Would they be doing the actual going out and looking at grass, or would they just be in the office?
Well, that's the question.
Well,
So-
we were just working on the planning and zoning clerk position.
Yeah, so the question is that the set of duties that we would anticipate a planning and zoning clerk to do, right? If, and this is the body that says, this is the roles, these are the duties. So if we wanted that to be the case, we write it here and. it's
Well,
part
but
of the-
then you wouldn't need then you wouldn't need a code enforcement officer.
Well, right, and I believe they are 2 separate roles, but I am not, the emperor. I'm merely the one running the meeting.
I would go and say that it sounds like the clerk without the zoning officer or whatever, code enforcement officer, doesn't sound like it's enough of a job.
I don't know that that's, it can certainly be a part-time thing, right?
Yeah, well, it'll definitely be part-time, but just taking minutes, organizing the agenda. And then I guess are they answering phone and doing all the permit stuff? When someone wants a fence, are they the one who's doing it?
Yeah, I don't know. We can look at, so my envisioning here is that we would look at then the duties and say, how do we make this work? So we could take these titles with duties and stack them into existing people's work and say, yes, you are now these 2 things, or, this is one job and this is another job, and they're 2 part-time jobs that are 15 hours a week, or, 20 hours a month, whatever it may be. But that's right now, I think we're just gathering the duties.
Well, I don't think you quite understand how much time is spent. Maybe the mayor can chime in on this.
Yeah.
How much time is spent with permitting?
Oh,
That's
I'm
why I
sure.
think that it is a full-time job, especially with all the fences. And, this brings up a whole nother topic for me about why we require permits for all these different things. That's a separate topic, and an ability to try to reduce the workload for the village staff. It's all these permits that we require people to get. Recently it's come up that, the chicken permit, you got to get a permit to have chickens. We don't really have that process, completely done. But, the mayor can chime in about how much time is spent on permits for fences and
Sure.
decks and sheds and all that stuff. That's a lot of work.
Right, and I think that's part of, when we have this conversation where I kind of went in circles, that we're starting to see a pickup in permits for fences, decks, the questions that come in, because some of these people, they come in, they bring their papers and they're out. And then you've got other people that come in that require much more hand-holding through the entire process. Lots of emails, lots of different things like that. So, I really wish that I would have done this, and maybe Eric can chime in if Eric has any idea. I would love to tell you guys how many permits we actually went through last year. And it was a lot. It depends again on exactly what you guys are wanting to do. We take $25, we do the permit, but I will say, according to residents, not according to code enforcement, but residents have said, nobody comes out and checks anything. They get their permit and they're done. And Tony, you've heard people say that too. Nobody's gone out and looked at the holes. Nobody's gone out to make sure that it's not over the line. Nobody's done any of that. I'm not saying that we're qualified to do it. I'm not saying any of that, but it's one of those that my question to you is, what exactly are we expecting our code enforcement and our, to do? Are they just expected to pass the permit and just assume that everything is done? I think that's, in my opinion, I think if you're going to do a permit and you're going to, require people to make sure that they're not going over the lines or anything, just because the paper says it is, doesn't mean that that's exactly where the fence is being put.
Right.
As you guys saw, we had one permit that there was some complaints about, that the company built the fence too far to the front. So again, it's just one of those things that how far do you guys want to go into it? Are we just paper pushing, or are we going out into the field and verifying?
We do, if I may, we do go into the field and verify. I do.
Well, I
take
will tell
time
you, residents,
on.
including people on planning and zoning, will disagree with that, and I will disagree. Again,
I
it
know,
depends
but
on.
I
who.
do go out and double check things when I'm in the field. I do this. I stop by, and if, I give it a once over. I stop out and answer questions. It is usually quick.
Right.
People don't
You
normally
do.
see me. Yes, I do, because it's normal. It should be part of the process.
Correct. And I
Good
think
luck.
some people didn't, let me rephrase that. There were people that didn't do it as part of the process within the last 2 years.
Correct.
And I think that's, again, is that what we're expecting our new code enforcement officer to do? Because I agree. And Eric, thank you for doing it. But I know that in the past it was not done. And we have a couple residents that have said that it is not being done. And Tony, a couple people that I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, I can't say that just because they didn't see somebody doesn't mean that.
I don't disagree with
somebody
that.
Come out.
Yeah, I know that there was in the past was not being done.
So, well, I also know that prior to 2 years ago it was done, because I remember more than one instance where code enforcement found post holes in the wrong places, or fences installed the wrong way around, and the village absolutely had people fix things.
Correct.
So, right.
It's
And
hit or miss.
but I do believe that it is, and so it should be part of a code enforcement officer's responsibilities to inspect. If we have a permit that says it's going to be built in place A, the code enforcement officer should go out and make sure that it's in where it says it should be. Now, as far as people not seeing anybody, maybe part of the process needs to be a calling card, right? A sticky pad that when the code enforcement officer goes and reviews the post holes, they have a little sticky pad that says, I checked it out, have a nice day, and they slap it on the front door, and nobody take a picture of it, because we are now in the 21st century and everybody has the opportunity to, prove everything they can with a picture, because they got a camera in their pocket. And there can never be a question again as to whether or not someone was there and they left notice. But that's also outside of what we were just talking about, which was a planning and zoning clerk. And so to wrangle that back in, I had one other thought with a planning and zoning clerk in relation to code enforcement, because one of the things that a planning and zoning clerk could do to offload some of the administrative tasks of a code enforcement officer, right? So the code enforcement officer could prepare the evidence for a violation, right? Pass that off to a planning and zoning clerk, who actually would write up the documentation, draft the letter that gets sent out, and send that out. So that could be another bullet point in the duties of a planning and zoning clerk, I think.
Well, and that goes along the lines of basically, and I'm going to say it my words, that would almost be more of an assistant to the code enforcement officer.
Well,
I
I
mean,
would be putting the code enforcement officer as the person who actually goes out and looks at things. And then the clerk is the person who says, okay, you saw this or that, right? Give me a list, I'll do the paperwork.
Right.
And would then, of course, free up the officer to do more walking around and looking at things.
I don't envision, the thing that I see happening here is that we're not creating a position that someone's going to stick with. If I see this heading in a direction where we're trying to I don't know, minimize the work for the code enforcement officer, when really that position needs to be a full-time. I mean, that's why I keep going back to combining these two things planning and zoning clerk and the code enforcement officer into one position. So that you have someone here that's full-time. And I hear everyone talking about, trying to make two different part-time jobs. That's not, I think, the direction that this should head in, because we are continually, I think that's why we're constantly looking for a code enforcement officer,
Yep.
because it's not a position that anybody wants to stick with. It's a stepping stone or a, something to kill some time until I retire.
If I could jump in real quick. So I think the crux of the issue, having been through multiple municipalities, I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer here, except the municipalities, you have a certain level of service that you want to get to your residents, right? And different municipalities have gone down the path. Some have had P&Z clerks who do a lot of duties. They've created part-time and full-time positions. It really comes down to the service level and, quite frankly, your coverage, right? And I think the biggest crux in a small village like this, from my observation, is simply that you do have a little trouble maintaining people, but that's at all levels. You have officers that move on, you have people that move on, and sometimes you find someone that fits in for multiple years, and that's wonderful. So I think you have to look at it from a kind of a management standpoint. And I think the problem here is that, unlike larger communities in which you've got multiple full-time people, so if one of them drops out, you've got coverage. Here, if you combine positions into a full-time position, you lose that person, you are seriously hosed. And you lose institutional knowledge, and you have no overlap coverage. And I can just tell you, having been through this, having been the lone man standing on a couple of occasions as you've lost code enforcement and clerks, it's valuable, I think, to have overlap in coverage and maintaining some type of institutional flow of process. When you have part-timers, whether it's somewhere between 20 and 30 hours a week, they are able to cover. And I think my observation of your biggest problem of retainment is the lack of benefits in the sense of some type of insurance coverage, because there's a number of people out there that need to work part-time and who are qualified individuals, but they are forced to find full-time work because that is, in many cases, the qualifier for getting insurance coverage, right? So it's just the way our current system works out there. And if you were to be unique and offer insurance coverage, you could get a good, loyal, multi-year staff at the part-time level. And so that's one way to handle it. And I think for your size village and your budget, it could be the most effective way to maintain that situation.
Okay, now you're saying that without, the most expensive thing you offer to an employee is health insurance. It is absolutely astoundingly expensive. So
It is.
even with poor coverage. So you have the Affordable Care Act that you have to balance against and make sure that you're meeting their requirements. And so I do agree that this has been I've been in the business environment for 45 years, and this is always a discussion about can you or can you not afford health insurance for people. And so a lot of companies that are even have more employees than we do, make a decision that they just simply can't afford it. And we need to look for people who, it's a fact of life. We need to look for that second worker in the household whose spouse is carrying the insurance. It's business. Now we're a municipality, so we're not business, but we're not social workers either. And, just take a look at that. I think that it is harder sometimes to find people if you don't have full benefits. True, of course it is. But do people automatically stay? If people automatically stayed, no one would leave Nationwide. No one would leave.
So
That's not just a generic reason to do something like that. So
Just
that's,
giving you an observation, man. It's
I
one of
think-
those things that I've been here long-term because it fits my needs. And quite frankly, I don't need the insurance. So you're right. You can find that second worker in those cases, but it takes longer. And it just depends on how you want to provide service. And I'm just giving you my observation of functionality at this very small level. So
and
I think it is.
I do agree, but I do agree, just to follow up with that, right? But I do agree that anytime you have cross training and you have people, anytime you can have more than one person know what's going on for a particular job, of course, it's absolutely important to do. It's very important to do. And I am all for that, and how these how this cross training happens, however logistically in terms of number of people, however it can happen, it needs to happen. There's no question about that. So you're not left in lurch with one person's laptop wondering what the hell they were doing. So absolutely, that's true.
So I think Eric's observation is interesting. I think there's also maybe more than one way to accomplish that, right? There may be a difference between subsidizing a part-time worker's healthcare and merely getting them access to the insurance group, right? That's, it could be there could be more than one way to get to a place. And I think that is a takeaway that I'll grab for the finance committee, because I think that's probably where that would belong. And then we can move forward with the current discussion, right? So I have captured in my bulleted list, managing and maintaining for planning and zoning clerk, managing and maintaining the permit process, preparing the planning and zoning meetings, being available for offline research for planning and zoning or the administration, being available to answer questions for the public or the administration, doing the meeting prep for planning and zoning, and possibly, and I'll make this a possibly, doing some amount of code enforcement or administrative work for code enforcement. Was there anybody else?
Well, the other thing that's in the code the only thing that's in our code about the planning and zoning clerk is that they are to maintain a record of all the building permits. That comes out of our code.
Okay, so that's another bullet point.
And that's the only thing I think that's in our code that the planning and zoning clerk's supposed to do.
Sure. If when we move forward with these ideas, we would be, making an adjustment there, right? We would codify what the responsibilities are of this title within the village. So, but maintaining building records, I've added that to my bulleted list. I think that's pretty exhaustive for planning and zoning clerk. I'll give one last call out, and then we can move on to clerk of council. And I'll start this time just to get the ball rolling with the items I had put on my list, which was prepare the council meeting minutes. And prepare legislation. And be available to do offline research for council.
The other thing that I've come up with, and it's is because of the chicken permit issue coming up here recently, is that there doesn't seem to be anyone. I guess the thing for the clerk of courts to do would be to make sure that when the ordinances or resolutions are passed, that information is, well, I wouldn't say the information, well, let's just take the chicken code, for example, is that, once that ordinance was passed, we needed to add the chicken, the permit to the cost of the permit to the fee schedule. We also needed to, incorporate the, in the chicken issue, there was a checklist that kind of disappeared and didn't get. So I think that what I'm getting at is that the clerk of courts needs to maybe, or not courts, clerk of council needs to follow up with the legislation and make sure that those things that are called out for are being, processed properly. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I mean,
so
that's where you come in.
I actually heard two different things in there. One was maintaining our codified ordinances, right? Because part of what should have traveled into the codification and into our record is whatever that checklist is that you are talking about, right? We have our codified ordinances are rife with examples of legislation that says see Exhibit A, and Exhibit A is lost to the ages, right? So that would be one thing that for sure, a person who's responsible to the codified ordinance is saying, yes, everything that goes with this ordinance is in record and in the codification. So that's one bullet point I heard from you. The other would be managing downstream implications of legislation, right? So meaning that, when legislation is passed, that then does things like creates a new fee, right? That person then would be responsible to maintain the process or follow through that those downstream implications are taken care of, that fees schedules are updated, that permit applications are created, whatever is necessary. It would be a role that's responsible for following up on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard one to put into words there. Good luck with that.
Managing downstream implications of past legislation.
Well, okay.
That's how I would say it. I don't know.
And Brian, in your clerk of council, did you have prepare the meeting packets as well?
I didn't. I had meeting minutes, but not packets. Hold on, let me.
That seems up that alley-ish.
Okay. Would they also do the posting of meetings, right? That's something that is a duty that's elsewhere, but would that be a clerk of a council responsibility?
There you go. I'll put that one in.
It really just, you're getting a list right now, but then
Yeah.
it will depend on whether that person is an employee or not,
Yeah.
for practical purposes.
Right. Yeah. We're just, like I
Making
said,
a
making a
list.
bulleted list.
Right.
Because again, what I envision is we're going to take this bulleted list against all the things that people are currently doing and shuffle it all around to fill in roles. That's kind of how I envision it. And I suspect that it's going to, I have some suspicions of what'll be the outcome, but I'm trying not to drive it towards an outcome. But okay, so post meetings, what other responsibilities do we expect for a clerk of council? Would a clerk of council be the person who, no, that idea came and went. I forgot it by the time I got to the end of the sentence.
I take that as a no.
Yeah, probably not. Anything else? Okay, then I think we have accomplished what I wanted to accomplish regarding planning and zoning clerk and clerk of council, right? We can think on that and we will bring it around to another discussion regarding staffing and needs, right, in a future work session. And now we can shift, we can pivot over to what Diane had wanted to bring up regarding the newsletter and communications.
Okay. As far as, I was looking for, there is some debate about whether, some people would like, for example, to have the way that the thought process started, it was some people were saying, well, why can't we just have this electronically, or why do we have this on paper, etc. So, and in the directory, I'm collecting information from people about whether they want the membership wants their directory paper or electronic. And so we had discussed in the past of having notifications electronically to people, or texting or emailing or whatever. So I went back to just to do some research, I went back to see if there was some easy way we could piggyback on the website we already have. And was there add-on product that might do some of these things or one of these things or whatever. So in talking to the vendor, there is something they call a subscription service for email and notifications, subscription notifications. So what it is a self-service add-on to the website. So you click a button if you want to and you enter your email address. And then on the back end, administratively, what we do is we decide what we want to have on this list. So for example, if we want to have a notification that the newsletter is ready, available. Newsletter is available on the website. So we could have a box, they could, if they want to be notified when the newsletter is available, they check that box. And then when the admin posts the newsletter to the website, there's an automatic notification to that person, or it automatically drags that newsletter as an attachment, whichever. They're notified to go that it's available. You can do the same thing with legislation. If someone's really interested, anytime there's legislation about the swimming pool, I want to be notified. So that would be a box, you check that box, and anytime we posted an ordinance or a resolution or anything else that had the topic of swimming pool, they would get a notification of that. And I was also thinking we could use it for volunteering. So volunteer opportunities might be one where you could check that if you want to know anytime the village needs volunteers for something, a project, you check this box. And then we would post that volunteer opportunity somewhere on the website. The program would see that and throw out that notification, that email back to the resident that volunteers are needed for something. So this product, I think it's because it's really just on the resident to subscribe if they want to. And it's a way for us, another way for us to get information out to people when they want it and as they want it. And so it is the subscription, the add-on to the web page is $600 a year. And I think it's a reasonable price for this. And I'm going to talk to customer service on Monday. So to make sure there's nothing else that we need to know about this, how easy it is to implement and all that sort of thing. So I've seen a couple of YouTube videos that go through pieces and parts of setting it up. It seems very simple. So of course, it all requires our administrative support to post things timely, but to the web page. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I'm not sure if I think the Mayor Hughes was in the communications meeting with us. She thinks it's a good idea as well. The other two members of the communication committee thought it was a good idea. And so this may have to though come through appropriations if there's not $600 extra in the website budget. So I wanted to get anyone else's feedback on this idea.
Yeah, I think it helps from happening to search through the website if you're looking for something. I mean, they would already be updated on it, so.
So I think it sounds great. I don't think the $600 is unreasonable for the product. I think that for it to be utilized well, it will add a fair amount of administrative work on the front end. Meaning, so if we're to take Diane's example, someone says, I want to receive notification anytime there's a legislation regarding the pool, right? That would mean that somebody, when they are uploading legislation, it can't just be an ordinance. They also have to add some sort of categorization that's appropriate, right? And managing those categories, making sure that the categories are created, making sure that they are accurately updated, right? That metadata to the record. That's where the pudding is, right? That's where the meat of getting it done is, because it would potentially be more than one category as well, right? Because thinking back on the legislation that repaired the pools, well, there was appropriations, there were, contracts, there were, and so there's appropriations legislation, there's, multiple categories that would necessarily have to be administered there, which I don't think is undoable, right? I think it's something that happens all the time. We just need to make sure that we know what's not involved and that the people who are doing it know
Right.
what's involved and are, you know, prepared to take on that responsibility or that additional duty.
I think that's true. I mean, I think it's a responsibility. I want it to be the responsibility of the communications committee to oversee or make sure communications are happening. So I am going to get the specific directions on what's required in order to make that hook happen and that email go out. And so then work with the mayor on how we would look today if we started doing this, or what changes we might need to make. And I don't know what those are, or what that would be at this point, because I don't know how where the hook has to be to make that happen. So at this point, it's a good point, Brian. And of course, it needs to be something that's not onerous for staff to have to do. And that's part of the making sure that we understand the product before we make the plunge.
And and if it is too tedious on some of the smaller things, I mean, just the simple fact of, like, we've talked about just anytime that you upload anything about the newsletter, or, just maybe not, I think the legislation is a great idea. That might be, like he's alluding to, if you start sending people, for example, the appropriations, there could be 12 different appropriations, and you're sending this to them and they're going, what is this? This is all for the pool. And then you start getting questions after questions, and you're like, no, one of those lines was for the pool, the rest of it is. So, I mean, it could create confusion. So maybe if it was only just, maybe if it was resolutions versus ordinances, I know that then you don't have the police officers when they're hired. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of not for transparency purposes, but for more confusion purposes. I think maybe there are some documents that wouldn't get attached. I think if it says we're spending $50,000 on the pool and not sending the appropriation is probably still sufficient, just because the pool, it says how much it is in there.
Right.
I think the only time to send the appropriation is if it was specifically that, maybe, I don't know. So, I mean, I could see where you could really ruffle some feathers with people getting some stuff going, what do you mean we're spending this, and not understanding that that was actually part of a different project. So, but I mean, yeah, I mean, being able to sign up for the newsletter, being able to sign up for different things like that, notify me anytime you have a new food truck coming in. I mean, I understand you can go to the website, but we added that one last minute and didn't go so well. But their truck was broke yesterday. He felt so bad. But anyways, there's certain people that, trust me, they call me all the time. Who's in the village this week? So that would be great for them to be able to sign up for the newsletter. Diane, I know that I believe the answer is no on this, but the other part is, is there anything that could also connect this to text messages or only email?
This one is only email.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
so I still have I thought in the next communication meeting, which we should schedule, I would go over once again the texting companies that are available and what the pricing is on that.
Right.
And it just, those get a little complicated but I know that you were not interested in sending out a bunch of text all the time.
No,
So it
definitely
gets
am.
complicated when you send out lots of text. You got to keep track of how many, and then the price goes up, and blah blah blah. So it'd have to be some, probably keep it simple.
Civic Plus does have a text notification add-on for the website as well. Because when we were looking at that a year ago, I had done a little research, but it was considerably more than any of the other options, because it was not based on the number of texts you send or even the number of people you have opted in. It was based on your population. So it was, I think I could probably go through my emails and find the numbers, because I got a quote, but the first year it was maybe 50 cents a resident, and then it went up after that but at 50 cents a resident, it was way more than any of the options that we were looking at. But it was nice because it was unlimited. You could have multiple categories. I mean, it was, the luxury premium brand versus, store brand. It was,
Two things I'll say real quick. One, just going back to what Diane and Tiffany were talking about with confusion and what you send out or not. I would not envision, an alert like, oh, here's the pool legislation that just passed, and then it just has the copy of the ordinance or the legislation. I would envision like more of a simple description of it. Hey, we just approved $50,000 for the baby pool. Construction should start in 2 months. We look to be open this summer. Hey, we just passed our budget, and not necessarily include the budget in it, but the budget has been approved. Check the website if you would like to see it all. Not actually sending all the little ordinances, and if we shuffle some money around to get the pool ready, you
Right.
don't necessarily need to tell them that
So
until
that-
something significant to say. And then Brian, with that text thing, I'll just throw my hat in and say 50 cents per resident would be what, $1,500 for us a year.
No, not, is that a year or a month?
No, that was a year. It was an
A year.
annual number.
Okay.
And for that, I mean, I know we're not made of money, but that doesn't seem, we would have to see at the end of the year, did we send out 4 texts? In which case, wow, that was expensive. But if we sent out 40, maybe they'd be like, oh, that was worthwhile.
Well, everybody knows I'm on board for it. I think that we, again, forget about the hard part for me is you forget to put one thing in the newsletter and you've missed your opportunity for 30 days to tell somebody about something.
Right.
And I don't have, not trying to go into the weeds. You get a sewer project that a road's going to be closed or this or that. We put it on the website. Nobody goes to our well, the majority of the residents do not go to our website 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to see if there's a road closed. And I for one, I'm always annoyed when I go, when I know that the road's going to be closed, because we told people it was going to be closed for 1 day and it was closed for 3. And even I was annoyed because I had to go all the way back around. So, and I didn't warn anybody else. So it would have been nice, to see that and me be able to send out something very specific. Wildwood's going to be closed today until 5 p.m. We don't have that opportunity. Not if you don't have to sign up for it if you don't want it. So again, it's another opportunity to be able to reach out to the residents that want to be reached out to. I think it will be time consuming on the forefront trying to get people registered. But, I mean, I know I like the ones that we get from Nixle in the event that there is an actual emergency. So I don't think we would overuse it, but I think if we had unlimited opportunities, it would be nice to remind people, when you have elections that, tonight is this, or we're going to talk about the building at Hawthorne tonight at this, and just send out a quick reminder. I don't know that we would do it for every single food truck because not everybody cares about it, but hey, there's a food truck on Friday, or, again, sewer projects are going to be in the Lakewood area today. Something as simple as a sentence long, it didn't matter how many times I told people that there was a sewer project going on Lakewood. I still had people complaining that they were not notified that day that they were going to be blocking their driveway. And again, there's only so much you can do.
Absolutely. There is always only so much you can do. I wanted to roll back a little bit to Mark's expectation of, if you're getting notified that there's legislation regarding, we should look to see what the capabilities or the functionality of the product is,
Right.
Because what I was imagining, and I can be completely wrong, I just know a little bit about web design and the way these things are made, is that the way a product like that would probably work is, it's set up that when legislation is uploaded, it says, oh, there's new legislation, it has these categories, and poof, it sends a pre-formatted email off to the people who asked for it with a link to the legislation, right? But there wouldn't, I'm guessing, be the opportunity to customize each one with a brief summary of the legislation, unless that's some, unless it's in the product and they're doing it away, I'm not imagining. So I'm just saying that we need to check that.
Well, right, the thing does also allow sending a mass email to, so for example, in the case Mark mentioned, if we did not, if we decided it was too complicated to, don't know yet, but if we decided it's too complicated to have a checkbox and for legislation, what we could do is phrase it a different way. If you want a notification about certain, like, cool, we could actually then, we could send a composed email to those people who had checked that box and explain and do an explanation like that, if that is something that we wanted to do. So I know that is an option. So we just need to, go through that, tease it out a little bit and see what makes sense for different categories. Yeah.
Well, I think it's great.
So
I haven't heard anybody say that's a bad idea. So I think that we have gotten enough
I don't know.
buy-in to move
Yeah.
forward.
I just like to chime in. I don't think it's a bad idea, but I would, prefer text messages to emails if that were a part of this conversation.
Well, see, you don't have to opt in then. It is an opt-in. It
Well, but
is yeah. So I understand that you would prefer text to email.
And that,
I totally
if I were to, I would be one of those people who probably want to be notified about this stuff. And that's what I'm getting at, is if we were going to do something like this, it just, because I think, well, we all have our phones with us all the time. So you're going to get that. Whereas there's some people like myself, well, I get emails too, but there's a lot of people that don't, get their emails as often as the text messages. I mean, that's my only comment on this.
Yeah, what's
So
nice about this is it's tied into the website. So the information is already being made available, and you're just taking advantage of that conduit that's already there. It's not like someone has to, oh, I'm in charge of doing text messages now. I'm an admin and now I've got to. It's not like that. It's taking advantage of what's already being done, which is the beauty of it. It's not requiring a lot of administrative work, theoretically anyway.
And Diane, I think the only thing that I'm going to piggyback on what Tony said is I think this is a perfect example of communications. I think
Yes.
this is a great opportunity to get additional people involved and get, information out to people that might not be checking the website every single day. But Tony brings up my point is I personally wouldn't opt in for any of those things, not being the mayor, not being on council, because I get 1,000 emails a day. I wake up to 250 average emails in the morning because of my jobs. So it's pointless. I literally go through every single morning and just delete, and except for the ones that are very important to me. And if I had 6 come across from Minerva Park, I'm definitely, it would just be too much. But the text is also, like he's alluding to, that is just something that I know residents have asked for. I personally would also be interested in, but I also think that we would have to keep it to a minimum because you don't want to we would as a group decide what do we want to notify residents, strictly road closings and such. Don't want to get into that. But my point being, as you're seeing, I think that the text alerts is just as much of a priority as this one. And I'm glad we're working on this one, but I think hand in hand, and I know you're going to do it in communications. That is the one thing that I said I really wanted done before the end of last year. And I'll say it today. This is something that I would like to see both of those implemented before the end of this year.
Okay. Well, I don't see why we can't. I think it's very doable within the next month for us to, we're all willing to make a decision, and pricing is good. Just, I don't see why we can't get it done. So yeah, no, that's great. I know we have a text, a group text for the community garden, and there's 15 people on that group text. And if I have my alarm on my,
oh yeah,
sometimes, when they get going, it's ding, 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 ding. It's like, oh my God. Turn it off.
I think that you need to keep it to a minimum. People don't want a Minerva Park text every single day. And I think it should be just for but yeah, group text, I just want to jump off a bridge. So
My family does that and it drives me nuts.
me too.
As far as the texts go, no more than one a day, no more than three, maybe 4 a week, if that.
Right.
And
And I'm thinking, exactly, I'm thinking along your lines. I'm thinking no more than one a week, unless there's something crazy. So,
Well, I mean, when you think about it, like a food truck reminder would be great whenever there's one. Road closures don't happen very often. Snow
Right.
emergencies don't happen very often. Maybe major legislation like, hey, we approved the community building plans were approved last night.
Right.
Woo! There's not enough to talk about with the village government.
there's not. I think the biggest one that I missed that I want to make sure.
Send another text out today. What are we up to, 6? No, there's just not that much going on.
Reminding people of the lake cleanup would be my favorite one. So, yeah.
Okay,
Diane, thanks for taking this on here. Appreciate it.
you're welcome.
Yeah, I'm
Seeing the
also looking very
communications
forward.
committee heading forward.
Well, it's, I'm happy. I like it. I like to do it. So it's a
Well, there
good
we go.
matchup because I like it.
Yeah, I'm very happy as well to hear these ideas coming.
All right.
Well, then we have handled all of the items we had intended to discuss. Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to bring up? Tony, any chance you want to forego the surprise and give us some preparation? Let us
Well,
talk
let me
about
say,
it.
I'm going to leave you wondering because I'm not sure that I want to get into it, to be honest with you, but well, let me tell you, I'm just fed up with the country and I'm seeing the crap going on in our country spilling over into council. There's a little preview of what I had to, hopefully I'm tired and I don't want to bring it up. That's all I'm telling you. Yeah, give me
Okay.
something to think about till Monday.
Okay. So I obviously am done in I have 8 minutes, but you guys can do whatever. I think, I don't know if I forwarded you guys, I'm just going to give you guys my little end. I don't know if I forwarded you guys the asphalt quote that I got. We had someone else come out and give us a quote for that. So we should have 2 quotes here. I'm hoping in the next day or 2. I'm going to go with Monday. What else did I have for you guys? You guys got the building. Don't want to get into that right now. We are, as you know, working with Kim and everybody, but if everybody will look at the floor plan, if everybody will look at all that information, internally, we have a couple tweaks that we want to make. That's all I'm going to say about that right now. But, we're extremely pleased with it. And then what else was there? Jesse will be there Monday. He emailed me. And I think that was it. The asphalt thing was my biggest thing. I want to get that ball rolling as soon as possible. Meaning start legislation for it. It can't be done until April or May anyways, but I want to start getting legislation rolling for getting that walkway fixed. So hopefully you guys are on
Are you
board.
seeing that Jesse's got some stuff that he's going to be reporting? Is that what?
I don't think, no, in the finance meeting, Tony, we had talked about the TIF funds and possibly borrowing against them and this and that, and without going crazy into, Kim does not, anybody else that was at that meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim does not feel comfortable at some of those numbers to even think that we could plan to do both of those things this year. We had discussed, possibly borrowing against the TIF funds, and we have gotten information for Kim and Jesse. We're working on getting the TIF information back to them so they can start reviewing it and finding out whether all of our options. So whether it be loans, whether it be, we're looking at the big picture of how to finance the building and how to get the lake project moving along, and whether or not it could even possibly be this year. So Jesse's just working on some stuff like that, but
So
we
it's
are
in
not gonna
regards
have
to
answers Monday.
financing issues.
yeah, we are not gonna have answers Monday.
Right, finance,
Promise you that.
definitely financing. So it's going to be, before we is the order that we're going to clarify the financing issues and then have the final discussion about moving forward or not, or how we move forward on the building?
At this point, no, I mean, at this point, I would love to give them a little bit of time to work on it. I think it's, in my opinion, it's going to be a one versus the other, but like you guys all know, we still don't know exactly what it's going to cost. We still have, no, I would like to still continue to move forward with the building and setting up a time, not today, 5 minutes before I'm leaving to talk about the building. But yes, I would like, I think that needs to be, something that.
So is that like would we be able to do that in the work session at the middle of the month?
I'm totally fine with that. Because I think that would give us some time to do some tweaks that we want to do. But again, I don't know that we are, I don't know, the tweaks that we want to do are details. So I don't know that there's anything that we really need to do at this point. I mean, as far as the design itself goes, there's a couple things that we can talk about on the next Monday, not next Monday, but in 2 Mondays, and go over some of those things, get your guys' feedback, and then see where we are.
We can also have the architects there for a discussion.
We could do that. So that's up to you guys if that's what you guys want to do middle of the month.
Well, my only question is we've come to the same place. The design is very nice, except I knew that as soon as I looked at it, I could hear Tiffany going, the bathrooms. How many bathrooms are there? So
You know me.
Just
so you know, that's the tweak.
That's the thing, right?
Mhm.
So, I just, we came to the same point in the road a couple years ago, whenever that was, but where we just couldn't afford what we wanted. So, at that point we were proposing doing it in phases. So I don't know if that is even something that there's a will of council and the administration to even consider, or if the architect would even consider it. But in order to move it into the affordability range. And so I guess I'm kind of asking, I'm kind of curious. I know you're running out of time, but I was just curious.
I think that's a fair answer to ask, and to, when they're there, whether or not that there's something. My guess is it's probably difficult to bid it out, and it would probably go a little higher if we did it that way. I think
it would
right now, I think right now we all know what the concerns are. We all know that the construction prices have just gone through the roof, and they're going to continue to go through the roof. So, it's just going to keep going up. So I think, here's what I would say. This is going to be the most horrible thing I'm about to say, but we've done this, like you said, Diane, 3 times, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, to an extent. We keep getting the same typical numbers. Now, granted, if we would have done this about 2 years ago, maybe it would have been less, because the construction prices have gone up so much in the last little bit. But at this point, they're not going down for years. I mean, I think we all can agree to disagree on that. This is where we are. We either need to quit talking about it or we need to move forward. So, because at this point, we've spent enough money.
I'm going to bring up again, now that we got these numbers in, and I brought this up before, I'm going to bring it up again and again, is that if this project was broken down into parts that can be done under $250,000, then you eliminate prevailing wage. And that's the thing about government projects, is that they're all prevailing wage projects, which in my opinion increases the cost by 30% easy. Just because of all that paperwork and the process that goes into that, so, maybe in another time we can talk about that.
Well, prevailing, I understand that. The other thing about prevailing wage is that, it's there to protect, I'll get my union hat on. It's there to protect the workers so that they get a better wage, which is the whole point of it, is that they're not being, people bid out projects. And that's why the federal government always has the wages set. When I've worked on bids for call centers, and, you cannot bid a call center rep at $5 an hour. There is a minimum amount to keep the playing field level, and so someone's not hurting employees by, so there's a reason for this. And Phyllis, I understand, of course, but philosophically, I mean, it's a
But a vast majority of the project.
a way to be more compassionate. It's the $15 an hour minimum wage discussion. It's what is, how invested are we as a society in a living wage. So I'm off my soapbox now. I got off.
Well, but there's, I mean, a prevailing wage, I mean, the lowest wage is probably $25 an hour. I mean, that's for a guy pushing a broom. You're not to
Okay.
mention that skilled contract, Okay, I'm done.
Oh, no, you guys are, no, you guys are fine. I'm out. I have to go. I've got to get in the car in 10 minutes.
I think
I
the
think we're
bathrooms
out.
Removed are the 2 single-use bathrooms inside the office area. Those are, to me, make the most sense to remove on those.
And we've already asked if here's, just so you guys can look at the plan. I already asked if I could remove the family bathroom and turn that into something else. And the answer is yes. And that's the one I want to get rid of. So,
I didn't see any mop-up room. I saw a closet, but the thing that everybody wants to eliminate is when the poor guy comes to clean the place.
You need a
There's no
utility
place
closet.
there's no utility closet for the bucket and
the entire downstairs is a storage area. The whole basement is a storage area. So for the record, it can be stored down there.
okay.
Well, but you can't get plumbing down in the bay, or it's difficult to get a drain into the basement because the line going out of the building is 4 foot above the floor.
Right. So, but there will be places for that. And those tweaks are all going to be, I mean, Ted has been amazing. But as far as the restrooms go, and Mark, just so you know, that is open for discussion because, it's direct, it's not like it's a far walk. The difference is during something like this, it is nice for employees to not have to interact with general public. That said, how often is general public in there? But then how often are we going to clean the bathrooms? Because with sanitizing and all of that. So I'm not opposed to that whatsoever. And here's Diane. The first thing I said is, we literally, in most of our meetings, everybody could legit go to the bathroom at the exact same time. There are so many bathrooms in this place now.
And I'm looking at it for more when the community's using it.
Correct. That is what it's for.
Those 2 office bathrooms are going to be locked because we're going to lock off the office area and
Right.
not the ones on the outside.
Right.
For sure. The ones that-
Absolutely.
then,
So that was
Christmas
so-
party.
Yeah, the
people
ones that
renting
are,
out,
the
whatever.
idea was that, you have a secure area so people could come in, go to the community room without touching any of the other areas of the building, and you have to have bathrooms that they can access for that. Yeah.
Correct. And that was the point of why we thought about, because we went back and forth between why can't we just use these over here because there's a million of them. Why do we need our own? And then you start thinking about, well, it is nice to have your own that you don't have the general public and, everybody coming in and using those restrooms. And so, but anyways, you guys hit the only points that I really made too. So I'm out, you guys. Thank you for everything. Are you guys all out too or no?
I was wrapping it up, so I was throwing it out there for any
Yes.
anything additional. But otherwise, I am of the opinion we can move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, everybody have a good
All
day.
right,
All right.
Bye.
Be well.
Bye.